think is really important to remember is that no one is coming to save you. The person who's coming to save you is the person who looks back at you in the mirror every single day. So you have to be willing to do the work. You have to be willing to start taking responsibility, to stop blaming other people, and to really be responsible for the type of energy and the life that you want to create. I want you to ask yourself, if I'm a kind and respectful person, how does a kind and respectful person show up? How does a kind and respectful person treat other people? How does a kind and respectful person operate under stress, under mismanagement, under chaotic work environments? Because a kind and respectful person is going to show up giving people that grace or allowing people to make mistakes, knowing that we're only human.
Welcome to the Business Insider Roundtable. Most people don't struggle because they lack ambition or intelligence. They struggle because their mind is running the show, quietly shaping their confidence, their relationships, and the way they lead when things get hard. Today's conversation is about what happens when you learn to work with your mind instead of fighting it. My guest is Angela Douglas, a transformational mindset coach, a corporate workshop facilitator who helps individuals and teams build emotional intelligence, strengthen communication, and lead with more clarity and resilience. She's also a speaker. Angela, I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Now, I always like to kind of start at the beginning, right? Because it took a beginning to get to where we are today. Before coaching, the workshops, the leadership work, all of that, who were you? Where did it all begin?
This is such a great question. And honestly, it's my favorite story to tell. So I was born and raised in Toledo, Ohio, and I had been there all my life, but I had big dreams. I had big dreams that I wanted to travel the world, that I wanted to help other people. And I didn't know what that help looked like, but I wanted to do it. As I started to grow up, things change and you meet people. And I noticed myself getting into a space where I didn't have great friends. I didn't have a great partner at the time. And I didn't really like my life. And I actually had posted something on Facebook slandering this former friend of mine. And it was before Facebook was in your hand. So I had to go back home, log into my computer. And when I logged into the computer, I was met with just shock and awe at the traction that this post had gained. And in the moment, people were saying like, "Oh, you're so funny, get her." And it was almost like a light had turned on and said, "Angela, are you going to use your power to hurt people? Or are you going to use your power to heal people?" And I knew in my heart that I wanted to heal people. I knew that I wanted to help people. And so when that happened, I decided that I needed to change. And I promised myself that I would never again post anything negative on social media. And ever since then, I've been uploading positive quotes. And then it kind of led me to a journey of this mindset work of how to become a better person. That's really where it all started. It started with that single interaction and it changed my whole life.
I'm so glad. Thanks for sharing that with us. It's hard. I mean, it's hard to be that vulnerable and admit that we did something like that, but the beauty of change is so endearing. You've shared that you were a young woman, and this is, such a unique experience, I think, but you've shared that you were a young woman from Ohio who hadn't traveled much before moving to Hong Kong. Can you give us some context and background on what inspired that move? Because it was at a young age, right?
So actually, I'll start with my first travel that sparked my desire to go to Hong Kong. I
Okay.
was sitting around with a friend and she was like, "Do you want to study abroad?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so she said, "Get up right now. Let's go." And I was like, "Okay." We got up, we went to the study abroad office. We each chose 3 places, came back together, and we decided on Prague. So I studied abroad in Prague. And when I went there, she ended up having some challenges where she couldn't travel in the summer, but I had put off all my travel just to travel with her in the summer. So I had 2 choices. I would either have to go back to Toledo, Ohio, like a puppy dog with my tail between my legs, not traveling and doing the things that I wanted to do, or choose to do it alone. And so I did it alone. And when I did that, it made my travel dreams so big. I came back to the US and I couldn't stop talking about how amazing Europe was. And I just knew that there was more for me. And so I came back, I finished university. And when I finished my undergraduate, I then decided I was like, I need to go to Hong Kong. So I bought a one-way ticket to Korea and I had a backpack and I was like, I'm not coming back.
My gosh, what was happening internally at that time? What and that to buy a one-way ticket. I mean, to buy a round trip is one thing. To buy a one-way ticket, whole different ballgame.
I was just really I realized how much I love travel and how it made me feel so alive.
Yeah.
And I wanted to explore Asia. Asia was the next place for me because I had done a good portion of Europe and I was just ready for something different. And I knew that I wanted to teach because I always wanted to help. And I was like, I could be a teacher. So I moved
Amazing.
really without knowing I was moving, but I knew I wasn't coming back.
Mhm.
And internally, I was just ready for a big shift and I was ready to start a new life in a new place. So I traveled around and when I landed in Hong Kong, I was like, this is it. It felt like home. There was something about it
Mm.
that just felt so special.
You never feared, because I know this question is out there for many of our listeners, any kind of political or social, economic, nothing, you were not afraid of any of that concern or not being able to come back to the States or anything like that.
Well, I just felt that if there's a will, there's a way, right? If I
Yeah.
want something, I'm gonna figure it out
Love
because
it.
like the experience in Prague, I figured it out. And I was like, I know that I can figure this out and I'm gonna
Yeah.
figure it out. So I wasn't concerned about that. I think I was more concerned about getting a job, getting an apartment, and having an actual place where I'm starting a whole new life.
Amazing. Amazing. And take me through that little bit of journey there, like how you get over there. Okay, you fly in the one-day ticket, you land, you arrive. What's the first thing you do?
I met my friend who actually sparked this whole journey, and he was working for a school in Korea, and he was like, "Work here, live here, stay here." And I was like, I don't know. It's kind of cold here. I want to be somewhere warm. Like if I'm leaving
Yeah.
Ohio, I'm definitely going somewhere warmer."
Yeah.
And so I really just kind of looked at what was there and I was like, where would I like to be? I had a friend in Japan, I had friends in Indonesia, in Malaysia, I had friends in China. So
Mm,
I had went to visit friends. So I kind of had that help of having a friend wherever I went.
so good.
And it was good, and it's amazing because I'm sure if you look at your circle, there are people who live in different places or have lived. So it's just about accessing those connections and being willing and open to sharing your journey and what your desires are. Because one of the things that I truly believe is that there are helpers in this world and that
Yeah.
people want to help us, that people want to support us. And I think that mindset is so powerful. Having that mindset that there are helpers and that there are people who want to support our journey made
Yeah.
that so great for me.
Love that. Now, when you first went, what were your expectations? What did you think would change and what would evolve from this move?
Well, I knew my mindset would change. I knew my friend group would change. I knew that my whole entire lifestyle would change. So I was ready just for a complete evolution and
Yeah.
a complete change.
So you were open to it, but looking back now, did some of that not happen? Like what actually changed? Or did that all actually happen?
I think, oh yeah, my mindset changed a lot. I
Mm,
think, when you are born and raised in the US, and I think if you get an opportunity to travel and go out and explore other countries,
yeah.
you start to realize how important things like global knowledge is. And you start to realize that this is a amazing stepping stone into anything that you want to do with your life because it opens you up to new perspectives. And I think one of the things that I didn't expect to happen so much was such a big perspective shift.
Yeah.
For example, in Asia, it's a very community mindset. So sharing things like food, the way that they eat is very different from how we eat in the US. When we eat in the US, we take our plate and it's just for us. Whereas in Asia, what we do is we just get a bunch of food for the table, we get small bowls and plates, and we share everything. And if we want more of something, we'll order more. So instead of overeating or only eating one dish, we get to eat all the dishes. And that's actually one of my favorite parts. And that was actually a very hard thing for me to accept coming back to the US and trying to eat again like an American.
Yeah. And so it's interesting you say that because I think there are still some restaurants out there that have a charge if you want to share something. They have an upcharge, that is so uniquely different. And I love this too, because so many people, they wait to feel this fearlessness, right? Before they actually move forward, right?
Totally.
And when in reality, courage usually shows up after the decision. I just think it's such a great experience, and I couldn't agree with you more. I now have 6 grandchildren, and of course even my children, having been an international flight attendant, not even close to your experience, but having little snippets of the European experience. I always wished, and I wish this still for my grandchildren, that they could get to a European country and be able to experience the difference, all of that. You talk about shifting perspectives. What was the first, I think, belief, Angela, about yourself that truly kind of cracked open during this time?
Lisa, one of my most important beliefs that I think sets the tone for all of this is that we can change, that we don't have to be the person that we've always been. We don't have to continue the learned behaviors that we've accepted from our parents, grandparents, great grandparents. And these are things that sometimes were done out of survival mode. So some of the things that we've learned may not be right, or some of the things that we've learned can be improved upon. And as an adult, it's now my responsibility to take action, to educate myself, and to do the best that I can do.
So, Angela, many listeners feel stuck even when life looks good on paper. So, being a mindset coach, when someone tells you, I feel stuck, what do you hear underneath that typically?
It's a great question. I think a lot of that comes from fear, maybe a fear of being willing to do something different. And I think that so often we can get stuck because we are doing all the things that feel right. We're doing all the things that seem to move the needle, but somewhere internally, there's a disconnect. And I think ultimately that needs to be addressed. Where is that disconnect, and where am I afraid to step out of my box that would help me to push forward in a way that gives me an opportunity to eliminate that stuck or change that?
Okay. That makes sense. And to that end, you emphasize self worth, self compassion, self
Mhm.
respect. Why are those in alignment with what we were just talking about? Why are those foundational before any real change can happen?
Well, think about it this way, right? I cannot hate myself into a version of myself that I love. So it doesn't help me to be mean to myself. It doesn't help me to be critical of myself. It does not help me to move anywhere if I'm just consistently picking or beating myself up over the decisions that I've made. I think one of the important steps here is acceptance, that gentle self compassion, giving yourself grace that you made choices from the options that nobody saw what you had to choose from. So, can you give yourself grace that you're doing life for the first time too?
I love that. And I kind of want to bridge the gap here for just a minute. So, taking us back to getting settled in Hong Kong, you were going to be a teacher. Now, did you bring the degree with you already that you were a mindset coach and that you were a career coach and you had all of this transformational stuff done? Or is that something you kind of pivoted once you got to Hong Kong and decided, I'm going to elaborate on this teaching?
So it was something that I always wanted to do. It was my dream. It's always been my dream to help people. And I remember when I was a little girl, I always wanted to be a teacher. And it's interesting because I would say that even now, as a mindset coach, I'm still a teacher. I'm still teaching concepts that people don't know anything about, or I'm still teaching in ways that I'm allowing people to understand themselves more. So I had started this journey in my early 20s. I looked up to people like Dr. Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, Tony Robbins, Mel Robbins. Mel Robbins wasn't as big at that time. All of the other mindset coaches really played a role in what I wanted to do. And I was always like, well, I want to do this too. And then I thought to myself, but who's going to listen to me? Because I'm just a girl from Toledo, Ohio.
Yeah.
And I kept doing my own personal research. So it became a passion project of mine, which is why I'm so passionate about it, because it's my work and it's something that I'm highly interested in. And so I continued to work on it. And then what I would do in Hong Kong is I would run workshops, or I had done some corporate contracts there where I had worked with different companies. And I realized, like, I know I can do this. And this is something that helps people to understand themselves more, helps people to communicate better, helps teams to perform better, and leaders to take more compassionate roles.
I align with that so much. And I think that what a great journey. This next question is so strong for so many people. Negative self talk. It runs, yeah, it's huge,
It runs
right?
the show.
We talk about it so much, and I think it runs on autopilot for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Where do you start when someone I have 2 parts to this question. Where do you start when someone doesn't even realize how harsh they are with themselves? But then also being in Hong Kong, is there a cultural bridge that you need to build in order to address this type of struggle or challenge as well?
That's a great question, too. So, culturally in Hong Kong, mental health is very taboo. It's not talked about, and and in the US, it's much more acceptable for people to go to therapy or go to counseling or see a life coach. There is definitely a need for professional development in all countries, and Hong Kong was a finance center of Asia. So there was a lot of space for that, and people are open and willing to it. Think one of the biggest things for people in Hong Kong and people in the US is that sometimes we have a negative disposition towards things, and we're often connecting with people on the basis of negativity or on the basis of complaining. And this becomes our culture. This is how we talk about things. I remember one of my friends in Hong Kong saying, well, Hong Kong people just love to complain. Well, French people also love to complain. People from the US also love to complain. So I think culturally, it can be seen across many different cultures. I think one of the greatest things, the greatest tips I can offer is start with awareness. Once you start to realize that you have this negative self-talk, or that you start to have one thought that then spirals into a negative spiral, this is an opportunity. So don't look at it as my brain is broken, but look at it as an opportunity that from here, now you're aware that you can change it and that there's an opportunity to grow. And that's where it all starts, is having the awareness.
That what do you tell people to like, for example, let's say you have somebody who is alone. They don't have somebody, a good friend or a partner or somebody who's going to say, okay, you're doing it again, right?
Mhm.
How do you help people find and become aware of their own
Inner voice.
inner voice? Good word.
It's interesting because that inner voice has been developed over time. And some of that inner voice even comes from our caregivers, whoever raised us. And sometimes we don't realize that until we start to do some of this work and we realize, wow, that sounds a lot like so and so. That sounds a lot like mom or dad or even a sibling. And one of the ways that we can start to combat that is journaling about your mindset, how you're feeling, and then identifying when things get hard, what is your self-talk like? Asking myself, like, how do I talk to myself? Do I talk to myself in a way that encourages me? And I think that's something that is really important for me, is noticing where other people can be encouraged. Because being an encourager is such a powerful place to be. Some people would have never gotten to a certain point in their life if they didn't have someone who encouraged them and helped them along the way. So how can we be that for other people? But ultimately, how can we be that for ourselves?
Yeah. That's so good. Now, kind of bridging your story, after years of doing your own inner work, you became a certified life coach
I
and began leading workshops globally. So amazing. What patterns did you start to see over and over again in people?
Definitely the negative self-talk is a big one.
Okay.
Negative self-talk. And when people start to have that negative self-talk, it breaks down their confidence and chips away at their self-worth. So this is common across so many cultures. And one of the ways that people can do that is through doing, or break that is through doing inner work. And the reality is that you're not stuck. You just need someone to show you the way. And one of the things I think is really important to remember is that no one is coming to save you. The person who's coming to save you is the person who looks back at you in the mirror every single day. So you have to be willing to do the work. You have to be willing to start taking responsibility, to stop blaming other people, and to really be responsible for the type of energy and the life that you want to create.
Angela, gosh, what an important distinction, right? Because most people know what they should do, but they're missing the bridge to actually live it and do it at the same time. And that's hard. It's a hard thing to do. And it sounds like you're I love that you also focus on emotional intelligence because it sounds like you're a very matter of fact coach. And maybe I have that wrong, but you've got to do the work, right?
Yeah,
There's no sugarcoating, there's no
no shortcut.
fluff, right? Yeah. So you work closely with professionals and teams different than a one-on-one scenario. What's the most common communication breakdown you see in bigger leaderships today?
I would say assumptions, people
Mm,
not communicating expectations. And I always say this, that expectation is the root of all heartache, which is a Shakespeare quote. We cannot expect people to read our minds. We cannot expect people to know what we want if we don't communicate effectively. And ultimately, communication is the key that unlocks all the doors.
I love that. Can say it again for me. Assumption is say that again.
Expectations
Expectations.
are the root of all heartache. This is a Shakespeare quote.
Yeah,
And I mean, imagine how many years has that been around? Expectation is the root of all heartache.
so
We cannot
true.
expect someone to read our mind. We need to have clear and defined outlines. And that is the key to getting your team on board and getting people to follow and drive your mission.
Yeah. That is such a great quote because when I hear it, I immediately go to like just a personal relationship. Like even myself,
Oh,
over
yeah.
so many years, I can look back, and I know we all do this as humans, but so many years I can look back and think I had this expectation. And that's why I was so disappointed because I
Yes.
assumed and expected it to be one way or the outcome was going to be this. And it wasn't, and then I was disappointed, but it was my own fault, but I didn't see it that way at the time, and that's so it's so impactful, and I love that. I love that you have that quote in your work. Emotional regulation sounds personal, but it shows up at work constantly, and I've experienced this myself personally. What does emotional regulation look like in real leadership moments?
So, one of the things that I think is very important to note here is that when I allow someone else to affect or control my emotions, it is giving the other person the power. And I remember Tony Robbins said something recently. He said, when other people trigger you, it's not them who's triggering you, it's you who doesn't have the emotional control. Me anchoring into my responsibility, going back to that, it's responsibility is a big part of this. Where can I start to anchor my emotional control so that I'm not getting upset, but I'm seeking clarity and seeking communication to bridge that gap so that we can have a healthier and happier outcome here.
And how does strengthening emotional intelligence actually change when you start to do that in a team environment, in team culture? How does it actually change the culture and the trust within the environment?
Immensely impacts the trust because once people start to see that individuals are taking responsibility for the collective, there is a further willingness and drive and motivation towards achieving a common goal rather than individual arguments or pettiness or holding on to things that have maybe set the course off track.
Okay. All right. I love that. So for leaders listening who feel reactive and overwhelmed, and I myself in my past being a leader have felt this way. What is one small shift that can immediately change how they show up?
One of the things that I think is incredibly helpful, this is a tool that I use every single morning. Before I get out of bed, before I start my day, I put one hand on my heart and I put one hand on my stomach, and I ask myself to show up as my highest self.
Mm.
So before you start the day, before you get overwhelmed by emails, before you jump on your phone, before your feet hit the ground, stop for a moment and ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be and how do I want to show up? And with that, we're going to make mistakes because we're human. So mistakes will happen. I may not always communicate, or I may be too reactive or overreactive to something that actually didn't deserve that type of a response. So instead of getting mad at myself, going back to that negative self-talk, instead of beating myself up over that, I just tell myself, okay, this is an opportunity to do better next time. And I look at it this way, like the GPS in a car rerouting. The GPS doesn't attack you when you make a wrong turn, right?
Yeah.
The GPS just says, okay, go up here and you're going to make a left. It doesn't say, you're such a fool. I can't believe you did that. How horrible of you. Just imagine GPS rerouting. This is another opportunity and I'm going to try again tomorrow. And when I'm gentle with myself in that way, when I'm self-compassionate with myself, that allows me to be more emotionally intelligent and more emotionally in tuned to the way that I react and how I can treat others in a more kind and gentle way, because everyone deserves grace.
This is great. So, would you say this is also, or would you have another offer of a realistic daily or weekly practice that helps quiet a busy mind, even for skeptical people who might not, you know, kind of buy into some of this? They think it's woo woo or whatever, right? What's a realistic daily practice or weekly practice they can implement?
So it's very important to know that, going back to that encouragement, right? That teams and people do best when they're encouraged. People don't do as well when they're beaten down and talked to aggressively or shamed for what they've done. But giving people grace in the moment and even giving yourself that grace is a great tool. And like I said, one of the things that I think is incredibly powerful for myself and for the teams that I've worked with is writing down some qualities. Write down some qualities of who you want to be. Write down the qualities of how you want to show up, how you want other people to see you. And then what I want you to do is I want you to ask yourself, if I'm a kind and respectful person, how does a kind and respectful person show up? How does a kind and respectful person treat other people? How does a kind and respectful person operate under stress, under mismanagement, under chaotic work environments? Because a kind and respectful person is going to show up giving people that grace or allowing people to make mistakes, knowing that we're only human.
I hear this. So good. Now, if someone listening is still going to pivot just a little bit, because if someone listening, also in your line of work, doesn't know what they want next, let's say career, relationship, life,
Mhm.
what's a first clarity step that you recommend for them?
Values, values,
Tell me
clarify
more.
your values.
Okay.
I do an exercise with clients where I have a list of 230 values. And what
Mm,
I ask them to do is I ask them to check the list over first. Don't do anything yet. Just check the list over. Look at all the words. Look at all the words. If you don't know some of them, find out what they mean and start to look at what is important to you. And then what I ask them to do is, from that list of 230, to choose 20 values. Once they've chosen those 20, from that list, I want you to cut that list in half. So that list goes from 20 to 10. Now that you have 10 values, I want you to cut that list from 10 into 5. When we live our values, that allows people to truly understand us and know who we are. And it helps us to know who we are as well. I don't know anyone who is doing great things with their life who doesn't know their values. And I think that when we live those values, it's a testament to who we are.
Angela, so good. Now, you've said that when you personally now started truly believing in yourself, what you're encouraging so many others to do, everything changed. But what I want to know is, what were some of the things that you stopped tolerating at that point for other people too? Is I find that you have to give up and quit some things in order to start believing in yourself and making those changes.
Absolutely. One of the things that I personally don't tolerate is I will not entertain people who don't have the same integrity that I expect from myself. And I think that's a big part of it. People whose words don't align with their actions, that's not okay with me, because it shows me that you don't have the integrity that I seek in myself. Secondly, I would say people with lifestyles that are not conducive to the work that I'm doing. So for example, I don't drink, I don't do drugs. And that's because I don't feel that I function well when I do those things. So for me personally, I don't want to spend a lot of time with people who drink or do drugs because it doesn't align with who I am as a person. And I would say definitely for me, there has to be a separation of I need to say no to certain things so that I can say yes to myself. So, for example, I'm not going to the bar on a Friday night because on Friday night, I'm sometimes working on my computer until 1 o'clock, creating worksheets or resources for my clients so that I can help them. Ultimately, what's really important for me is delivering value to other people. Delivering value to others means that sometimes I have to say no to things that are not important or things that don't need to be prioritized.
Mm, absolutely. That is 100% so true. And when someone commits to doing this work, recognizing those things, and that can be difficult, right? That can be difficult to say, I don't want to go to the bar on a Friday night,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
I don't want to surround myself when sometimes I know talking to people, we stop, we look around, and when you make somebody say, okay, just evaluate your surrounding and who you surround yourself with, it's kind of disheartening, or it can be sometimes to go, "Oh my gosh, like, this is my life. This is who I surround myself with. How am I gonna give that up? How am I gonna walk away from that?" And that is the challenge. But when someone commits to this work, what do you see changes first? Their circumstances, maybe their relationship with themselves? What do you normally see?
Well, ultimately, one of the things I think that's really important to know is that if we want to elevate ourselves, we have to separate ourselves from the things that don't align with our vision and don't align with who we are. So I always say separate to elevate. And I think that that comes at the cost of losing people. And it might even be people that we love and deeply care about. And it doesn't mean that you don't have to have these people in your life forever. It just means in this moment, you need to focus on what's best for you. And the way to do that is get in touch with yourself. So I find that ultimately it's honoring yourself and honoring your desire to grow and to change. And not everyone can meet you there, which is unfortunate. Not everyone can meet you there, but it doesn't mean that you have to step away from these people forever. It's just find the place in your life where they fit because they can't fit into the everyday going to the bar or every weekend going to the bar if you are trying to seek higher goals or greater achievements. Some of that has to come with a sacrifice. Just like if you were training for a marathon, that's something you have to prepare for. You have to make space for that in your life. So where are you willing to make that space and honor who you want to become?
And here's the deal. These folks that you might have to walk away from for a little bit in order to recalculate or recalibrate yourself, if they're true and genuine to your life, they'll be back.
Exactly.
They're not gonna they're not gonna be gone forever. They're
No.
gonna accept you because they love you, no matter what that looks like, right?
And I
So go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and I think
Yeah,
that people who truly love and genuinely want to see you succeed will support you. They're not gonna take that away from you, or they're not gonna say, "I don't have time for that." They'll see what you're doing and they'll support your journey.
for sure. They are gonna want that for you. So Angela, for listeners who want to go deeper into this work, what is the best way for them to connect with you? Do you work with people in the States? Can they
I do.
connect with you and learn more?
Absolutely. So I am on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I'm on YouTube, and on
Okay, give us those handles. So TikTok it is
the Angela Dawn. So
okay.
Angela, my first name, and then Dawn, which is my middle name. And
Okay.
on Instagram, there's a full stop in British English or a period between the and Dawn, Angela and Dawn. So
Okay.
should be easy to find. Actually, my a lot of my work is on TikTok and Instagram, and I have shared a lot of tools. And one of the great tools I've shared is the 357 flip, which is my own mental tool where you take the negative thought and you flip it to a positive 3 times, 5 times, and then 7 times so that you can start to actively rewire your brain to think better thoughts. And when you do this, it might be a bit difficult at first and it might feel a bit fake because you've convinced yourself for so long that this negative mindset is the way. But once you start to change that, things will change. When you start to open up to that, or your brain will start seeing things differently.
Okay, so can you give me a quick example of that? Like, for example, like somebody with, like me, for longest time, I had imposter syndrome. Like, who's going to listen to me? What do I have to bring to the table? Now I'm not that person, but
Mhm.
what could I do?
So when you have that thought, what I want you to do is I want you to then flip that thought. Try to start with 3 positive thoughts. So if I said, I have imposter syndrome, who's going to listen to me? I know that my work is valuable. I know that I've worked on myself and I've taken the time to help other people. And I know that people find value in what I do because people often ask me for advice or they come to me. So give yourself some examples of why.
So good.
It's
Okay.
actively flipping that. And imagine if your brain is like a forest, okay? So I'm actually working on my book, which is called Brain Forest. And in that, imagine that we're in a field and the field is full of grass. The grass is up to your knee. When you are constantly going down a path that's clear, that's your neurons and synapses connecting, and you have that negative thought and it keeps going down that pathway because that pathway is clear. It's going to be hard to start a new pathway, but once you start to flip to those 3 positive thoughts, what you're doing is you're creating new neural pathways in your brain. And what'll happen is that old pathway where you talked negatively to yourself or you said, who's going to believe me? Who's going to listen to me? Why would they trust me? You're starting to provide evidence and provide real, tangible words that are going to help you to create a new pathway. And eventually, the old pathway will grow up and get covered over. And it just takes time. Very important to remember effort and consistency.
Effort and consistency. Angela, before we wrap up, what would you like to leave our listeners with today?
I'd like to remind them that you're not stuck. You just need someone to show you the way and you need the tools. And by using the tools, you're able to get there. And remember that no one's coming to save you, that you're saving yourself because that's the person who looks back at you in the mirror every single day. I know we want people to love us and to help us, but the only way for us to truly find that is for us to love and help ourselves first and to be gentle and compassionate in the process.
And here's what I'm sitting with after this conversation. So many people are waiting to feel ready, to
Oh,
feel confident, healed, or certain before they make a change. But readiness isn't a feeling, it's a decision, maybe that you reinforce every day by how you think, how you
absolutely.
speak to yourself, and how you respond with life when it gets uncomfortable. So, if something in today, listeners, this is for you. If something in today's conversation resonated, don't just absorb it. Choose one small shift. Reach out to Angela. She shared and tried what she shared and tried this week, but reach out to her for more insight, for more help, especially in the moment you'd normally sort of shut down, maybe overthink or react. Angela, thank you so much for bringing such a grounded wisdom and clarity to this conversation for the work you're doing here and abroad.
Thank you. It's an honor. And I want to remind everyone give yourself grace and be kind and compassionate to yourself because life does not get easier when we're hard on ourselves.
So good. That's perfect. I love it. And listeners, keep going. You're not behind.
You're not.
That's right. You've got that. So good. Thank you for sitting in with us at the Business Insider Roundtable. Until next time, take care of yourself.
Thank you.